position where you really cannot say no, because their entire focus is on making the sale. In other words, serving themselves, as opposed to the focus being, I'm here to serve my potential customer. And that means I need to help them solve one of their problems. And the moment I can do that, it's no longer me attempting to sell them. It's them wanting to buy from me. As long as there's a balance in the win-win sense between what I'm charging and I have to charge, otherwise the transaction becomes a win-lose transaction. And I can only survive a certain length of time in a win-lose situation. So I have to charge, but at the same time, I also have to be convinced that they will get far more by making this purchase than I will get, and that's fine. So it's a flipping of I'm selling you to I'm serving and supporting and potentially educating you to the point where you will know if this is right for you or not. And if it's not right, you can say so, and I won't manipulate you through objection handling and all kinds of other tactics and techniques to make you do something. And that's the salesperson we all, I'm going to use the word hate.
It's interesting because you said a couple things that really ring with me. And you said that you help to educate them. But the biggest thing you said is that you have to charge. And a lot of people have trouble with that. They either don't charge at all or they undercharge. And a lot of women, this happens to, because I know I was one of them. I had a lot of trouble coming up with, well, how much should I charge? I still have that trouble. How much should I charge? Because some of the advice I give is actually really valuable because of the way I think. So if you were advising someone like me, how do I create that win-win so that I'm not just spewing all of this knowledge at someone? They can walk away and they go, well, yeah, that was great. And I'm sitting there going, uh-oh, I didn't make any money for all my time.
The key, excuse me, the key is understanding that all influence has a very, very distinct pattern, which means that we can create a system out of it. And if I follow the system, I will automatically get to the point where I can determine whether it's a win-win or not. And the system is very, very simple. And anybody listening to this, I really recommend you write this down. The very first barrier a salesperson has to overcome is the no trust factor. Because if the client has the perception that I don't trust you, it doesn't matter what I have to say, it doesn't matter what I have to offer, they will not hear me. They will not want to work with me. So the first obstacle is no trust. The next one is no need. I don't need what you have. And that's a fairly automatic kick in, if you wish, when I'm in front of a salesperson, because it's my way of defending myself. And I might not even really understand the depths of my need, because we so often go with what we want, but what we want might not serve us. For example, I might want an ice cream cone when I'm actually on a weight loss kick. And if I let myself fulfill my want, I'm not serving me. But when I can help you discover what you really want, if you're serious about health and weight loss, you're going to have a different orientation toward that ice cream cone. So it's no trust, no need. The next one is if there's trust and there's a need established, and I advocate a solution, or we do a problem solving together, and the client doesn't see that the problem is solved, they'll say, oh, this is not going to be of value to me. So I don't see that this me is the next barrier. So we need to position or to work through the problem solving phase so that the client, first of all, understands what the solution is, and secondly, agrees that what the solution is will give them what they want. We can then ask for the business, and we call that closing, but it should never be a hard close, because a hard close tends to trap people. It needs to be a soft close. How does that sound to you, Tammy? Does this make sense to you?
Makes sense to me.
Or
And I have been on that, where they're trying to do that hard close, where they literally put the pen in your hand.
Yeah, yeah.
And try to get
That's
you to
manipulation. That's manipulation. So when I say, does that make sense to you? And you say, yes, it does. Then I say, well, it's ready to do business. Now, something else kicks in for the buyer at this point, and that's fear. The fear that they've given in too easily, the fear that this might not work, even though the other things have now been in place. And so they come up with an objection. And the objection could be, oh, I have to think about this, or I have to check with my wife, or, you know, whatever it is that comes up. So at this point, the obstacle could be called no hurry. I'm not in a hurry to make a decision. So I can help them through that by educating, or again, rediscovering what they really want. And once we're through that, now they will buy. And the final obstacle is, I did not get value from doing business with you. So that one is no satisfaction. So the 5 obstacles are no trust, no need, no help, no hurry, and finally no satisfaction. So I'm not going to recommend you to others, and I'm not going to buy again from you. And if all of those are in place, they will tell their friends, just the way you see a good movie. You're going to say, hey, you've got a need like this. You've got to speak with Werner. So that really is the foundation of creating a win-win relationship. Constantly meeting the buyer's needs, or the potential buyer's needs.
That does make a lot of sense, but I do have a question, because often people love working with you, but I have a tendency sometimes, I don't want to tell people like my secret. So how would you overcome something like that? If I'm working with someone and I think they're really, really great, but I don't really want the rest of the world to know, because it's like my secret sauce. How would, if I'm someone's secret sauce, how can I get them to overcome their fear that maybe they're going to lose out if they share that I'm great? You know, I've seen this happen to me and other people. And also, so that's one part of my question. The other part is,
I mean, let me begin. I'm not completely clear on what you're asking. When you say me, are you talking yourself as a salesperson or as the buyer? Who's not wanting to share their secret sauce?
Sometimes the buyer will work with someone who is great, or they get a really good service, but they don't necessarily go sing your praises, because it's almost like they don't want anyone to know that they've found a secret sauce that helps them do something. So as the secret sauce person, how would you talk to someone and say, hey, it's okay for you to share this, you know, that I do good work for you, if they're happy? You know,
it would be the way I position it. If I know that they are happy, I might say something like, you know, Tammy, what would really help me is if you could refer me to some of your friends that have similar wants and needs. And then I might add, and you know, as you know, I am absolutely here to serve them, not to push them into doing something that they might not want to do. I will serve them the way you would serve them as your friend. And some people will not do it. Most people will do it because they trust and they like you. And that's the key. They have to trust and they have to like you. And so much of like.
I think you're right. So here we are, we're in the live in the hive in Be Connected, where people are using the connection generator, for example, and they want to connect with other people, either, you know, to create business alliances, or maybe even to make new friends, or to generate business. And they're encouraged to connect and meet, and then of course to review that connection. So from your point of expertise, how should people use that time, and how much time, what should they be doing in this connection time, when they're using a platform like Be Connected to connect?
Okay, the very first thing, of course, has to do with my profile in the system, so that I really connect with like-minded people, or with people that might be interested in what I have. Then we need to get phone to phone or Zoom to Zoom, and preferably I will turn to them and say, wow, Tammy, what a pleasure meeting with you. And it's got to be genuine. Actually, let me sidetrack for a moment.
Okay.
Sales has to be the expression of your capability of being a leader, which simply means that there are two key components to this. One of them, of course, is communication skills, and these are particularly selling skills. Leadership skills are still communication skills. They're people-to-people skills. But the other part is, who are you being as you are interacting or communicating with me? Are you being from the perspective, and I will read this in you, that you're here to make a sale? Or are you coming from the perspective, I'm interested in you and I'm here to support you if I can? So that orientation is so critical. And then when we do get face-to-face or Zoom to Zoom or on the phone, I might say to you, Tammy, I'm so thrilled, you know, that we got together. Let's spend the next half hour, if that's okay with you telling me a bit about yourself, me telling a bit about myself, and seeing if there's a fit in terms of the potential of us to interact or even do business in the future. Is that okay with you? I have to get their approval or their commitment, because they're again, three keys in a very early interaction. Number one is, what is the purpose of this call? You and I have to agree on what's the purpose of this call. The second one is another P. What's the process that we are going to be using to serve this purpose? And the final P is at least an understanding, and I might not use this phrasing, but what's the payoff for you and I to be spending this half hour together so that it's not a waste? And if you know what my purpose is and you agree with it, you know what my recommended process is and you agree with it, and you have a sense that I'm not here to manipulate you, but I'm looking for a win-win outcome, you're going to be much more open to talk with me. And at some point in time, if I see that there's a need, I might schedule another call, or I might say, Tammy, may I ask you some additional questions about what you just said? Again, I've got to get your permission, because I've got to be on your wavelength. I've got to be on your side of the table. And as you share that with me, there's a structure or there's a pattern in asking questions on the task level or the head level, which people can very easily answer. And what we're looking for is a gap between what they have and what they want. And if there's no gap, I've got nothing to sell. Or if there's no gap that fits what I have to offer, the bigger the gap, the more than likely that we can do business together. And then, of course, the next set of questions has to be at the heart level, because all sales decisions or buying decisions are made at the gut, at the feeling level. So there's another sequence of questions that we can take them to that level, and we cannot do that unless they trust us and we've maintained trust throughout this questioning process. So it doesn't sound like an interrogation process, because it's not an interrogation. It's a process by which I'm choosing to support and help you. And that's where the educational part comes in. You might not be aware of, the exact extent of this gap or what it means to you personally. But through my questioning, you become aware of that, and your acceptance of me as, an authentic, knowledgeable expert increases exponentially as I do this correctly. And it's not manipulation, because it's all about you determining and me understanding what your needs are, what your wants are, what the impact or the significance of that in your life is. And until I know that, I've got nothing to offer you. I was going to use the word nothing to sell you, but the word is more accurate. I have nothing to offer you. If I have something, we can then go into problem-solving mode, and I can describe that to you and get your agreement and understanding, and then move on. And if not, again, we can be friends.
Well, a lot of times you may not have anything, like you said, to offer in terms of selling something, but you do have, perhaps you can be a support system to that person. Maybe you can be a mentor to that person, or offer just that, whatever that human connection. To me, a lot of what you're saying, it makes me feel like my natural curiosity pops up. And I think a lot of times when we go into that desperation of trying to sell something, all of the things that you're talking about, getting the consent, we forget about that, or we don't think enough about the other person and about, what are their needs and what do they want. I want to keep these shows actually fairly short, and you've given a lot of really good information. Now, I'm sure that everybody, when they're looking at your image, they see the mountain behind you. My natural curiosity is like, tell me where that is and the significance of you and your mountain climbing adventures. And maybe tell me, is there anything coming up? We're coming out of COVID and everybody's excited to get back to something. Tell me more about the mountains and about what you're planning in the future.
Okay, you can see some climbers at the bottom of the V. We are approximately 3 hours hiking away from Mount Everest Base Camp in the Himalaya. And this is probably the most gorgeous scenery that anybody can ever see. And I know there's a lot of gorgeous scenery in the world. I take people on what I call transformational life experiences, or if I'm dealing with corporations, transformational leadership experiences, because I learned more about myself as a person and a leader than on these treks than I ever had as a corporate leadership consultant. Now that says a lot. And the only reason is I got to learn who this guy is. I got blown away by who this guy is. And everybody that has ever gone with me has come away saying, wow, I've had a life-changing experience. And when I say, what kicked in for you, the normal things that come back are, I got to know who I am. I really saw a dimension of me that I had not accepted. I'm blown away by who I am and by what I can do. And the other thing that they talk about is having a sense of connection. not just with fellow climbers, but with the entire globe, with the environment, with the rocks, with the path, with the assistant guides that we have. And as a result of that, that's where leadership comes from. That's the intrinsic part of the human being within a connection. And you cannot teach that. It has to be developed. It has to be personally learned. It cannot be learned from the outside. And there are lots of ways of doing that, but this is the way that I found. And it's just, a brilliant adventure in addition to a discovery of self. And my first climbs, I had no intention of discovering self. Never even thought of that.
So the mountain actually taught you something that you weren't even expecting to learn. And when you talk about yourself, what was the big discovery that you made about yourself through the mountains?
And it really isn't as much the mountain as it was the effort and the day-to-day focusing on the next step and the next step and the next step, which, and I can't talk about this as learning. Somehow it's just integration into knowing what it feels like to be living in the moment, knowing what it feels like to be totally responsible for what I do with the next step. I think I'm going to step on a pebble and I'm going to fall, or I'm going to step on a slope and I'm going to fall, as opposed to being responsible for me. And the other part is just simply, as I mentioned a bit earlier, the connection, the real sense of humility, humbleness relative to this amazing globe that we're in, and this amazing environment where everything is just absolutely wonderful and perfect, and feeling at one with it. And it's not always doing that in the moment because of some exhaustion, because we're dealing with high altitude. But in retrospect, it's just like, wow, what an experience. And as a result of that, knowing that there was a shift and being able to recall that feeling whenever I reflect back on it, because it's not something that stays with me all the time, but I can recall the feeling at a moment's notice. All I have to do is remind myself of being there. And wow. You asked, what I've been doing the last 2 years. I had to defer taking people to Everest Base Camp or to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro, which I've climbed 9 times now. It's a high altitude hike, but planning to, hopefully COVID will allow me to do a trip to each of those locations next year.
So it looks like maybe 2022 might be the time. So if somebody wants to reach out to you, and again, they can have great connection conversations with you, they can ask you about leadership, they can ask you about sales training, and of course they can ask you about your mountain adventures. What's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
Probably by email, and that's very simply Werner, and that's WERNER at Quest, not West, Quest736.com. And anybody that contacts me, if they want a brief summary of, the steps in selling, I'm happy to ship them that, because, just like you, my intent in doing this is to have an impact, not just to have a nice conversation with a beautiful woman called Tammy, Dr. Tammy.
Well, thank you so much. So everyone, make sure that you reach out to Werner Berger, Berger, and you can send the email to him. And again, I would take advantage of the connection in the Be Connection generator to connect with Werner, just to talk to him about his life adventures, because it's, to me, it's just fascinating. Like I said, when I went to Alaska, I spent a lot of time being in awe of just how big everything was and how small I was. And then I literally chased bumblebees from flower to flower, trying to take photographs of them. And I was just so, it was so wonderful just to be in the moment, and to be in that beautiful Alaskan expanse. I imagine, I can't even imagine how big Mount Everest or Mount Kilimanjaro must be. It's because it's just, you know, the expansiveness of the world. So with that, thank you so much, Werner. And do you have anything you'd like to say before I let you go?
Yeah, just I want everybody in this world to find a way of living in their authentic self and living out loud. And if you think you're being weird at some point, allow yourself to be weird at some point, because that's what makes you unique and beautiful and acceptable and human.
Well, I like that. So everyone, this is Dr. Reverend Tammy Passer, and this is Expert Profiles. Our guest today has been the wonderful Werner Berger. So watch this replay and take note, and I will see you again tomorrow. And until then, make it a beautiful day.
Wow, Dr. Tammy Pastor has some interviewing skills.